How to kill your fear. There is a moment in every human life when fear stops being a warning and becomes a prison. Fear does not shout, it whispers. It waits. It studies you quietly, patiently, until it learns the exact shape of your weakness. Then it builds a cage around you, made not of steel, but of memories, doubts, and the stories you tell yourself about why you cannot move. Fear knows your habits. Fear knows your past. Fear knows the exact moment to strike, when you finally feel ready to grow. And the cruelest part? Fear doesn't need claws. It only needs your permission. Some people meet death only once. Others meet it every day, in the silence where their courage should have been. Because fear kills long before the body dies. It kills your fire, your voice, your potential. It convinces you that safety is found in smallness, that comfort is a form of wisdom, and that hesitation somehow protects you. But the truth is simple. Every dream you abandon was murdered by fear, long before reality ever touched it. And here is the part fear never wants you to discover. Fear is not a wall. Fear is a story. A story you inherited. A story you believed. A story you can end. The moment you decide to confront it, fear begins to starve. The moment you move despite it, fear begins to die. And the moment you stop negotiating with fear and start killing it, is less than #0. 5# is greater than your life finally becomes yours. Chapter 1. The Anatomy of Fear. Fear survives for one reason. It convinces you it is protecting you. It does not enter your life as an enemy. It enters as a guardian. A quiet voice in the back of your mind saying, "Be careful, stay small, don't risk this." But here is the deception. Fear uses the language of safety to create a life that is anything but safe. Because the moment you stop growing, you begin dying, not dramatically, not loudly, but slowly, internally, silently. Fear's first weapon is memory. It replays your failures, your embarrassments, your moments of weakness, until you learn to fear your own past. Fear's second weapon is doubt. It takes your smallest uncertainty and magnifies it until it becomes the only truth you recognize. And fear's most powerful weapon is imagination. Not the imagination that dreams, but the imagination that destroys. The imagination that builds futures. So terrifying, you would rather stay exactly where you are, even if where you are is slowly killing you. Understand this clearly. Fear is a storyteller. It weaves narratives about what might happen, what could go wrong, what you are not ready for, until the story becomes more real than reality itself. But fear never tells you the other story, the story of what happens if you rise, if you act, if you dare, if you finally choose the life that scares you the most, because it belongs to you the most. The truth is uncomfortable, and fear counts on that. Fear knows you crave certainty. Fear knows you avoid discomfort. Fear knows you would rather wait for the perfect moment than risk an imperfect step. But nothing grows in perfection. Everything grows in movement. And fear is terrified of movement. Because movement is the beginning of power. Movement is the beginning of identity. Movement is the beginning of becoming. someone fear cannot control anymore. So ask yourself one brutal question. Who would you be if fear never had a vote in your life? Most people never answer this, not because they cannot, but because answering it forces them to confront the truth. They have been negotiating with fear their entire life. But negotiation is how fear survives. Confrontation is how fear dies. And this chapter, this moment, is where you begin to learn the difference. Chapter 2. The moment fear loses power. Fear is strongest in the dark. It thrives in silence. It grows in places you refuse to examine. Fear is not strengthened by reality. Fear is strengthened by avoidance. Every time you run from a difficult truth, fear grows. Every time you delay a decision, fear grows. Every time you silence your own voice to keep the peace with others, fear grows. Fear is a parasite. It survives on your hesitation. But there is a moment, a single, small, internal shift, where fear begins to starve. It happens when you stop asking, is less than #0. 5# is greater than, what if I fail? And begin asking, what if I never try? This question is the beginning of liberation, because it exposes fear's greatest secret. Fear cannot stop you. It can only convince you to stop yourself. Once you understand this, fear's entire architecture collapses. The walls you thought were protecting you were never walls. They were illusions, stories, shadows cast by a mind that believed survival was more important than becoming. But you were not born to survive. You were born to transform. And transformation does not begin when fear disappears. Transformation begins when you move forward while fear is still screaming. This is the moment fear loses power. The moment you act in direct opposition to the story fear told you about yourself. Action is the antidote to fear, not confidence, not motivation, not reassurance. Action. Because action rewrites the narrative. Action interrupts the fear loop. Action proves, in real time, that fear was exaggerating its importance. And the first action does not need to be heroic. It only needs to be honest. One step, one call, one boundary, one uncomfortable move toward the life you keep imagining, but never claiming. Fear studies your patterns, but it cannot predict your courage. And courage is not loud. Courage is not dramatic. Courage is the quiet decision to stop obeying fear, even if your hands still shake. In that moment, the moment of trembling action, fear feels something it has never felt before, is less than #0. 5# is greater than you, your will, your identity, your awakening. And fear begins to understand that its time is running out. Chapter 3. Facing the truth fear hides. Fear survives because it blinds you, not by blocking your vision, but by controlling what you are willing to look at. Fear does not hide the world from you. Fear hides you from yourself. Every version of fear you experience, doubt, hesitation, anxiety, avoidance, is not the root. It is only the smoke. And most people spend their whole lives trying to fight the smoke, instead of confronting the fire that creates it. This is why fear returns, even after you succeed, even after you grow, even after you prove it wrong. Because the real source was never challenged. Fear feeds on unexamined truths. The parts of you bury, you ignore, you refuse to confront. Fear knows exactly where your identity is weakest. It knows the wounds you pretend you've healed. It knows the memories you never questioned. It knows the stories about yourself you repeat without realizing. They stopped being true years ago. But here is the shift, the turning point that prepares you for the next chapter. Fear does not fear your strength. Fear fears your clarity. Because the moment you stop running, the moment you stop rationalizing, the moment you look directly at the truth behind your fear, something inside you awakens. You begin to see the pattern. You begin to see the root. You begin to see that fear is less than #0. 5# is greater than was never asking for your obedience. It was asking for your silence. Fear wants you confused. Fear wants you overwhelmed. Fear wants you lost in emotion. So you never investigate what actually controls you. But when you stop reacting emotionally and start observing consciously, fear loses its camouflage. You see how it enters. You see what triggers it. You see how it manipulates your past to control your future. And once you see the truth, fear begins to lose the one thing it cannot survive without: your illusion. Because fear is not powerful. Fear is persuasive. It sells you a story so often that you forget you ever had the right to challenge the script. But now, as you face the truth head-on, you are approaching the moment where fear can no longer hide behind its stories. Chapter 4 is where everything changes. Chapter 4 is where you stop uncovering and start dismantling, where truth becomes action, where identity becomes power, where confrontation becomes liberation. Chapter 4 is where fear dies. Chapter 4: How fear finally dies. Fear does not die when you ignore it. It does not die when you resist it. Fear dies when you do the one thing it cannot survive. You move directly through it. Not around it, not above it, not later, not once you feel ready. Fear dies when you take action before you feel prepared. Because action is the one language fear cannot understand. Fear speaks the language of hesitation. Fear speaks the language of delay. Fear speaks the language of not today, maybe tomorrow. But courage speaks in simple verbs. Go, speak, try, begin. The moment you act, you step out of fear's dimension and into your own. Because fear cannot follow someone who moves with intention. Understand this: fear is a script. Action is a rewrite. Every step you take is a sentence deleted from fear's story about you. And you do not need a heroic leap. You need a decisive one. One moment of truth where you stop negotiating and start becoming. Fear starves the moment you show it that you are willing to move, even with shaking hands. Because transformation is not the absence of fear. Transformation is the mastery of motion, despite fear. You kill fear by making the move it told you you weren't allowed to make. Call the person, start the project. Speak the truth, set the boundary. Walk into the unknown, and refuse to apologize for existing. Fear cannot survive a human being who commits fully. Not perfectly, not confidently, but fully. Because full commitment is the antidote to fear's poison. It is the moment your identity shifts from the one fear shaped to the one you choose to embody. And once you embody that identity, the one aligned with truth, movement, and self-respect, fear collapses under the weight of your becoming. Fear dies when you stop trying to feel brave and start acting like someone who no longer needs fear's permission. This is the moment everything changes. When you no longer ask, "What if I'm not ready?" and instead declare, "I am becoming ready by moving." And in that movement, raw, imperfect, deeply human, fear takes its final breath. Because fear's greatest weakness was never your strength, it was your decision. And now you've made it. What have we learned? Fear is not a monster. Fear is a story. A story that grows every time you hesitate and dies every time you move. You learned that fear survives in silence, avoidance, and illusion. But you also learned that clarity weakens fear and action destroys it. You learned that transformation is not the absence of fear, but the decision to rise while fear is still screaming. And you learned the truth. Fear never wanted you to see. You were never powerless. You were only uncommitted. Thank you for watching. If this message reached you, share it with someone who is still negotiating with their fear. And remember, you don't become fearless. You become unstoppable because you move despite the fear. Until next time, rise with intention, act with clarity, and live with courage.